Please see the full disclaimer on your screen before we begin.
Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. For a long time, the story of the Rust Belt has just been about decline, right? Empty factories, lost jobs, you know the drill. But right now, there is a massive structural shift happening in urban planning. It's a strategy called adaptive land reuse, and it's literally rewriting the playbook for legacy cities. Today, we're going to look at a total masterclass in this concept, Cleveland's Midline Project.
We've got a lot of ground to cover today. We'll start with the Rust Belt problem, then look at the adaptive reuse solution, dive inside Cleveland's Midline, break down the real estate mechanics, look at the hurdles and hidden costs, and finally, how this creates a blueprint for America.
Let's jump into Section 1, the Rust Belt problem.
To really appreciate the solution here, we got to look at the scale of the mess left behind. When manufacturing moved out, it didn't just leave empty buildings. It left massive tracts of land heavily burdened by environmental liabilities. For decades, these former industrial sites were absolute financial black holes for cities. Meanwhile, modern logistics just packed up and fled out to the suburbs, way out to the cornfields where land was cheap, flat, and totally free of historical pollution. So the cities were basically left holding the bag.
Which brings us to Section 2, the adaptive reuse solution.
So, here's the million-dollar question for city planners. How on earth do you fix an abandoned 200-acre industrial wasteland? Because you can't just slap a park over a heavily contaminated site, and you definitely can't just ignore it. You have to actively reclaim it. And the answer to that is adaptive land reuse. Now, this isn't just about, renovating an old brick warehouse into trendy loft apartments. We're talking about the strategic process of taking massive, underutilized, and often contaminated land and turning it into high-density hubs for modern economic activity. It's a brilliantly calculated play to pull major economic drivers, think advanced manufacturing and next-gen supply chains, right back into the city limits.
Moving right along to Section 3. Inside Cleveland's Midline.
To really get how this works, let's zoom in on the actual dirt of Cleveland's Midline Project, 200. The Midline represents a staggering 200 contiguous acres of former industrial and rail yards cutting right through the heart of the city. Just think about that scale for a second. Finding 200 connected acres inside a major urban center, that is incredibly rare. It's prime real estate that had just completely fallen into obsolescence.
And this perfectly illustrates the shift we're seeing in commercial real estate right now. The old playbook was all about suburban greenfields, developers chasing that cheap, flat land way outside the city. But the new strategy? Urban infill. With global supply chains under so much pressure, being close to the end consumer is absolutely everything. Cities are waking up to the fact that their best assets aren't distant cornfields, they are these underutilized urban locations that already have heavy utilities and historic rail access.
So why does this intense focus on adaptive reuse actually matter to us? Well, pulling these operations back to the core hits three major targets. First, it recaptures the municipal tax base by getting high-value commercial properties back on the city's ledger. Second, it solves the dreaded last-mile urban distribution problem. Slapping a massive logistics node right inside the city center drastically cuts transport times and emissions. And third, it drives equitable job growth. By putting these major employment centers right on existing public transit lines, you're making high-paying jobs accessible without forcing people into long, expensive suburban commutes.
Let's look at Section 4, the real estate mechanics.
Because having a grand vision is great, but executing it, that's where things get wild. Step 1 is brownfield remediation. Honestly, most developers run screaming from these sites because historical contamination is a massive financial liability. You have to leverage public-private grants just to clean the soil before you can even pour a single drop of concrete. Step 2 is infrastructure modernization, dropping in heavy power grids, new water lines, and modern fiber tech. And Step 3 is assembly. Modern tenants need huge buildings with 40-foot ceilings and endless trailer parking. Trying to legally consolidate dozens of old fragmented city lots into one 200-acre master plan is an absolute legal and zoning nightmare, but you literally can't build a site without it.
Let's turn to Section 5, hurdles and hidden costs.
It is absolutely crucial we look at the other side of this, right? Projects on this scale face a lot of valid skepticism. Planners have to balance the big promises against the very real risks. The promise of next-gen clean tech jobs sounds amazing, but you are fighting spiraling infrastructure and remediation costs. You want high-performing commercial assets, sure, but if costs spiral out of control, developers have to charge sky-high break-even rents, which ironically prices out the exact tenants they want to attract. Plus, you've got urban revitalization, but neighboring communities have totally valid concerns about gentrification, rising property values, and heavy diesel trucks rolling through their streets. So the key takeaway here is that the midline is a massive, high-stakes proof of concept. Its survival basically boils down to these two things. First, securing major anchor tenants. The site is officially validated the second they land a massive clean energy manufacturer or a specialized cold storage operator. Second, meeting infrastructure timelines. The city has to actually deliver those heavy power grids and modern road access on time. If they lag, the entire model just stalls out.
Finally, Section 6, a blueprint for America.
Zooming back out to the big picture, this single 200-acre site in Ohio is actually telling a much bigger national story. As this quote points out, it's a bold, structural play to turn Cleveland's industrial past into its economic future. If they can pull this off, if they can navigate the cleanup, the legal red tape, and the community impact, it becomes the premier blueprint for legacy industrial cities all over the country. It proves that with creative assembly, adaptive reuse really works, and abandoned urban brownfields can be reborn as critical infrastructure assets.
As global supply chains keep evolving and prioritizing domestic resiliency, the focus is absolutely going to shift back to our urban cores. Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder today. Look around your own community. Is your city prepared to embrace the complex mechanics of adaptive reuse, roll up its sleeves, and turn its forgotten past into its economic future?